Okay, we're good.
Okay, just trying to find the document on here, but it's not coming up.
Are you trying to present which document, Norm? I can present it for you.
Oh, the agenda, the
Package.
First document, the first attachment.
yeah, yes, well, the agenda and the package that was sent out. Oops.
Yes.
Here we are. Okay. Can you just make it a little bigger, please?
Sure. Is that good?
Well, this seems to be something open behind it.
And that's my screen. Are you able to see it now?
Yep, that's good. So if we could just go back to page 1.
To the agenda or the,
Yes, please.
okay.
There we are. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, which is being live streamed. I'm pleased to welcome any other board members or interim leadership team. Let me start with the land acknowledgement. As a committee of the City of Toronto Corporation, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with the multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We have a very brief agenda today. May I now have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
And I think we had an unique situation today. We are only 2 of us, so I will second it. So next item is conflict of interest. If any member has any conflict, does anyone have any conflict? I don't have.
No.
Okay, having heard none, we will move to the next item. That's the approval of the minutes of the AFRC meeting on January 6th.
So moved.
And seconded by me, so that's done. Next item will be draft AFRC activities. That's a monthly calendar of activities for this committee. Norman?
Yes, thank you. Rajni, could you just move up to the calendar, please?
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you. We'll start there. So thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I opted more for visual presentation at this time to look at the activities of 22 and 23 in this format and to get some feedback, and then I can put it into the format that we discussed at our last meeting. I just found this a little easier for presentation purposes. And what was asked to do was look at what 22 might look like as a standing committee, recognizing that many, but not all of the decisions prior to June 1 would go directly to the board just from a practical and timing perspective, then to look at the rest of the year, and then to look at what a normal cycle might be for next year. Recognizing that there's board dates have yet to be established, and I think this cycle might help the organization in looking at the timing of its board meetings for 2023. But what I'd like to do is just step through this document, and I did map all of the activities back to the work plan and just put them in on a monthly basis. And I'd like to sort of share this with you, first with 2022 and then with 2023. And for any comments that you have, I would appreciate. So today, in March, we're just looking at the work plan contents, and I'd like to spend a bit of time just sharing with you some of the financial transactions that we believe will take place between our two corporations, Toronto Seniors and Toronto Community. And it will be sort of an interesting gyration until such time as we have some other resolutions to some systems issues. So in the month of April, and this will coincide with the I think the annual report that's going to the board in April, is that we will need to make a recommendation to the city from the board on our choice of external auditor for next year. And Michael and I have been in touch with KPMG to get an appreciation of what the audit fee might be. KPMG won a multi-year bid to be the city and agencies and commissions auditor, I think through 2024. While Toronto Seniors Housing was not at that time listed as an agency or commission of the city, we opted to go to them first to get an understanding of what their fees might be. They'll bill us at the same rates as the city, etc. And there are some synergies because they are this auditor for Toronto Community Housing. So we'll be bringing back at the end of April, at our April meeting, in order to go forward to the board, our recommendation to you through the board to the city. And that recommendation will be considered, I think, at the city's annual general meeting as they are our shareholder sometime in July, right? So, but they need to get all this packaged together. The other thing you'll notice in in 2022 and 2023 is that I've proposed that we go to quarterly financial reporting as opposed to monthly. And because at the present time, every time we have a board meeting, we do report on the financial results. And I'm making an assumption that the board, particularly next year, may go to quarterly meetings. But if they don't, I still think it's probably appropriate to move to a quarterly financial reporting cycle as opposed to monthly. Something that I think I'd like some feedback on, because otherwise we'll change the dynamic of this material. And clearly, I think during the early transition period, post June 1, I think it's going to be the ability to generate a monthly report it might take a few months to get the first one ironed out and clarified. So I am recommending a quarterly review of financial material in this document, you'll notice. In May, and if you could move this up just a bit, Rajni, we will be bringing to this committee a series of policy approvals. Many of them will be essentially mirroring Toronto Community Housing's policies because we'll be using their systems, their processes. So we'll bring forward a policy, procurement policy, a capital expense policy, an expense reimbursement policy, and an investment policy to you. Generally will look much like that's a community housing, and the system that community housing uses is all predicated on predetermined delegations and levels and so on. So we are mirroring that, as you know, from the delegation of authority policy that we presented to the board last month. Into June, June 30th will be when I think we can report our transition spend, like that's from January to the end of May. And that will be on sort of the current system of what we're doing right now, which is a little package that I have, and be able to report on financial matters relating to perhaps how we're doing in the first month of processing of transactions, and a little bit of information, if possible, on how things are going. What is quite critical is that the preliminary budget for 2023 is due to the city in early September. And so we're proposing that the presentation of the 2023 preliminary budget be sometime in August. There's currently no board meeting scheduled in August. And so we're going to have to look to Michael and the chair to see how we're going to manage that going forward. The city budget this is an estimate of time right now, early September. I suspect, given some of our machinations in terms of developing the budget for next year and our work in terms of transitioning on June 1st, that the budget cycles was going to be, again, quite unique because we'll have a stub period year. We may be looking for support from Toronto Community Housing in some regards. And, we may be looking to enhance the funding from the city for a number of factors, including perhaps some IT infrastructure. And you'll notice as well in August of this year that this would be the point in time when we would be recommending insurance coverage. Insurance is provided through an organization that was created at the time of downloading called the Housing Services Corporation, and we are obligated to acquire insurance through there. It's our view that the insurance coverage should probably mirror what exists on those buildings through Toronto Community Housing at the present time. There is a fair amount of work involved in getting that insurance piece in place, and so it is a significant factor in the development of the budget for 2023. So proposing that there's an August date for the development of that budget, and also in that meeting, we may very well have our Q2 results, which would include April, May, and June. Then we move down into October, and we're starting to look at quarterly financial results for Q3, and then in December. And I put a number of these things in the December period because it will allow us to get through the budget cycle, and it will allow the new team and the CEO some time to discuss things like what are the key financial indicators that the organization wants to manage and report on, what sort of internal controls they want to look at, what sort of compliance audits or internal audit function they'd like to develop into the future, which would include the recommendation of internal audit policy. And then at this point in time, also see from the external auditor what the audit plan for 2022 will look like. And that's what happens just before the holidays and ends our fiscal year. So the cycle really is, I could say, in sort of 3 or 4 big buckets: quarterly financial reporting, a significant amount of time in June, July, or May, June, July, in terms of starting to think about the budget for 2023. It's going to be a lot of work for the permanent team. And so the sooner we get them on board, the better. And so that's the cycle that we're planning right now in terms of coming forward to the audit committee for 2022. For 2023, the cycle remains similar, although there's, you start the cycle in February with a report recommending approval of the audited statements for the prior year, seeing what the fourth quarter looks like from 2022. Then the cycle of reporting audited statements to the city, the annual report, moving into Q1 reporting, recommending the auditor for the following year, and then the budget cycle starts again. So that's sort of the flow that this document includes. But on the bottom of this page, what it does not do is, which is a major piece of work, is the development of the ERM framework policy reporting and monitoring mechanism that the board and the senior management team want to put in place. And it's my view that you need to have the permanent CEO in place and get some grounding on what the environment is, and then develop the framework through this committee and onto the board for a conversation. So I did not include in these cycles at this time the development of that framework. I think the new team and the CEO are going to have their hands full, working with Toronto Community Housing, developing the relationships with the city, sorting out the funding, sorting out 2023, and somewhere along the way, the board and you are going to need to develop this framework in terms of what you are interested in and what the management of the organization is interested in, reporting on an ERM framework. So that has not included here at this time. So I would be glad to hear your comments on any of this material so that we can incorporate it into the sort of a final draft, if you will, for this year and next year, recognizing that the business cycle and the board meetings have yet to be established for the following year. And it would be nice that the board meetings sort of tied out to the business cycle and not sort of what I've historically seen as sort of arbitrarily selected board meetings, and then you fit the business cycle into it. So those are my comments, and I'd be glad to hear yours.
Warren, what do you have?
Norm,
Yes, Warren.
very comfortable with everything you've said, and I very much appreciate your presentation that covered all of the important stuff. I'm certainly comfortable with going to quarterly reporting at the board level. One question about insurance. What was the name of the insurance company that we would be required to use?
It's called the Housing Services Corporation.
And tell me a bit more about it.
Well, the Housing Services Corporation, I think, was established at the download, and it is the primary insurance carrier for all of the the supportive housing, seniors housing, family housing across the province. So they have a huge portfolio.
Okay.
And they go out to market for millions of dollars of insurance cover. The experience, what we've been told is that, and this by the way, this covers property, cyber, commercial general liability, auto, like the whole gambit, crime, D&O, the whole 9 yards. Rather high limits at Toronto Community Housing, given some of their history, particularly on the D&O side and general commercial liability.
Right.
But these properties are extraordinarily difficult to insure. And so we, what they do is go out to market for billions. I think they have about $4 billion under insurance cover, Michael, something of that nature. And so they go out to market and get insurance coverage. And that application process would for us begin, in the late May, June timeframe. And one of the things that we will benefit from, we hope, is that the building claims experience of our 83 buildings will transfer to Toronto Seniors Housing, so that we will not be seen as a new insurance applicant, and for which the market could just charge us exorbitant rates. So there will be some history that we can benefit from in terms of going out to market, and that history being the claims history of our building. So I hadn't heard of them before, but it is a massive organization that goes to market for Toronto, Hamilton, Thunder Bay, Ottawa, like you name all of these organizations, cities that are service providers.
Okay, thank you very much. That's useful.
Yeah, I have Warren, if you're done with, or I have a couple of questions, Norm. Essentially, this Housing Services Corporation is a broker, insurance broker.
Yes, that's my understanding. Yep, but
Okay.
we're mandated to use it.
Okay.
They also go out to market on utilities. So some buildings that were downloaded from the province some years ago, we are not obligated to use the Housing Services Commission broker for utilities. And we could go to the city, we could go to the Housing Services Corporation. Some of the buildings that may be ours, we must use Housing Services Corp. So they offer a wide range of, so I guess, risk management activities, and also they negotiate, I think, some huge amount of natural gas contracts for many of the social housing groups in the province. So they are a massive organization set up by the province to capitalize on volume purchasing of both insurance and utilities, natural gas in particular.
And what about insurance coverage for June to August? I think here we are doing this somewhere in August, right? What happens to insurance coverage for these 3 months?
Well, that's a $64,000 question that we're working on right now. So we are going to become, our relationship with Toronto Community Housing is we will have, I guess, not a pure landlord relationship, but as close to a landlord relationship as you can get. They will still own the buildings. So we're trying to work out what the insurance cover would be between June 1, when we sort of take over, and when we think we might become I guess, a fully fledged landlord, and the new date is likely to be Jan 1 to tie with the new fiscal year. So the issue is we're trying to work with Toronto Community Housing to see if they would extend coverage, because they already have the cover, and work with Housing Services Corporation to do likewise. The interesting issue on insurance is that the annual premium cycle is November 1 to October 31. So their Toronto Community Housing's insurance coverage on their current portfolio ends November 1. So we've got the discussion with them about insurance coverage from June 1 to the October 31, and then what they might do for us between then and the end of of December. So insurance cover is one of the elements of our term sheet agreement with Toronto Community Housing that is currently being looked at by both parties. Michael, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, we're going to discuss the term sheet at the upcoming board meeting, and its relationship. We'll discuss there to the timing of insurance and what's required with respect to insurance. So it'll come up in some detail there as well.
Yeah, thank you.
And I mean, we will be obligated, no matter what, to probably have some general commercial liability cover, which we can also get obtain through Housing Services Corp. But it's really the meat of it is the building property insurance coverage that we need to sort out.
Okay, Norman, one more question on this KPIs, key performance indicators. I think they will be established only in December. Till then, we won't have any.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you can't have it. I'm just saying that I think it will take the permanent staff some time to orient themselves, get established, and then bring forward KPIs and related topics, run that through the ERM's framework. And I don't actually think you'll probably get to it until later this year. That's why I put it late.
Yeah.
Later in the fiscal year. It could move forward, it could move back, but I don't think practically the permanent staff are going to have time to deal with that. They're going to be very busy just working with Toronto Community Housing and the city, trying to establish what the budget requirements will be for next year, to be honest.
Thanks. And the last one, this ARM framework. We will be hiring a consultant, or will be just borrowing from TSHC?
Well, TSHC has a fairly well-established framework. They've got a policy. We could certainly bring the policy forward for your review, but that policy basically states effectively the quadrants of review, right? So are you going to look at tenant management? Are you going to look at fiscal management? What are the quadrants of a risk management system that you want to use? What's the process that you want to use? How you want to measure it? How do you want to evaluate risk? They all have all that information, but I think it's going to take some time for Toronto seniors to understand what their risk profile is, what it means, and how to report on it. So, I mean, I don't think I think early on, the board will be able, through the CEO, be able to identify what they think some of those key risks are, but to actually put it into a systematized manner of reporting, I think will take some time. So, key risks will be, could be things like how's the relationship going between us and Toronto Community Housing? What are some of the operational issues that are emerging with respect to the tenant management and how we want to improve tenant wellness and so, I mean, there are a number of things I think that will emerge as key risks, but I think the fundamental framework of how you want to measure it, how you want to evaluate it will take more time than just doing it on a
The new corporation is to stabilize, and you should have, the new corporation is to stabilize, and you need people to understand, as they say in risk management, every employee is a risk manager. So,
right.
I think in the interim, it's still going to be important that the CEO or the leadership and the management bring forward risks, but they're going to have to assess them in the context of the transition. I think that, the first relatively stable year will be 2023, where you'll be in a way of operating with the buildings and the Toronto Community Housing. And I think that year will be the year when you'll be able to kind of put in more long-lasting kind of measures of risk that you can report on and see trends on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So Warren, any more questions or?
No, I'm fine, Lawrence.
Okay.
A lot of uncertainties going forward for the next number of months, but I think we've got a good plan provided by Norm, and a lot of tasks, and let's just keep on moving.
So next will be, I think we'll be moving to closed session. So we need a motion to move into closed session.
So moved.
And I second it. So Rajni will be moving into a closed session in camera.
So Rajni, maybe you could tell us when we're closed, please.
Yes, I think you are not live now.
The only item we have left is motion of adjournment, unless
Oh,
we have got anything else to discuss.
I
So
think you're
moved for
live now.
adjournment.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, you're live now.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I think the only thing left is for adjournment. I need a motion for adjournment.
I so moved, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and then I second it. So meeting is adjourned for the day. Thank you,
Thank you,
Norm.
everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks
and
so
thank you,
much.
Rajni. Yeah.
Take care.
Bye. Yeah, bye-bye.